that to everyone's attention. Special presentations. Corey.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I'll ask the students from Marin School of Environmental Leadership to come up to the podium and do a quick introduction. As most of you know, Marin School of Environmental Leadership's been a school within a school in Terra Linda for the past 5 years. We've worked with MCEL students over the years on projects. They volunteer for us and do all sorts of things. And this year what they did was they worked on a project to sort of assess how different cities are doing in terms of sustainability goals. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to the Marin School of Environmental Leadership.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening. We are the iMatter Now Action Group from the Marin School of Environmental Leadership within Terra Linda High School. My name is Anna Ostrovsky.
I'm Cameron Evans.
I'm Hayden Nuyens.
I'm Julian Olson.
I'm Mila Gupta.
And I'm Sawyer Taylor.
There you go.
So as Corey mentioned, we are a group of sophomore high school students from the Marin School of Environmental Leadership based in Terra Linda High. We're all extremely passionate about the environment and the consequences that could happen as a result of the climate crisis. For example, I'm very concerned about these consequences because I have immediate family in India, and their water supply will be directly impacted by the climate crisis.
Personally, my main concern about climate change is how sea level rise will affect my friends in a beach community I often visit with my family.
Because of both of our global and local concerns about the climate crisis, we've decided to participate in the organization called iMatter.
iMatter is a national organization that was founded by a 13-year-old in 2007, comprised of teenagers across the country who are worried about their future and want to work with older generations to end the climate crisis. iMatter works with their government on local change with global change in mind. iMatter provides easy steps for youth to make change in their government. So the first step is to organize a group. The second step is to assess your city by creating a climate change report card. And then the third step is to make a plan and present to your city council about the problems that you came across in the climate report card.
So, as Anna mentioned in the last slide, one of the biggest tools that iMatter provides us is the climate report card. This is based off of the science by Dr. Jim Hansen, who is one of the leading scientists in fighting the climate crisis. Climate report cards show how a city is doing and compare this to the national average, and also compare this to what is needed to combat the climate crisis. There are 5 sections of the climate report card. There's the zero emissions plan. This grades the city on how well it's doing in terms of its plan to get to zero emissions and combat the climate crisis. The second section is the renewable energy section. This grades a city on how well it is doing in terms of what percentage of energy comes from renewables. The third section is the waste section. This grades the city not only on the amount of waste created per capita, but how much waste is kept out of landfills. The fourth section is the carbon removal section. This grades the city on how much carbon it removes from the atmosphere. The fifth section is the youth involvement section. This is a possible half-grade bump for having a youth leader involved in creating a plan to combat climate change.
After gathering the required data, this is the report card that we created for San Rafael. But first and foremost, we would just like to thank you for all of the action that San Rafael as a city has made over the last 10 years. We know that what we're dealing with is a complex issue, and we're really thankful that the board has been as progressive as they have. San Rafael truly is a leading city in climate action, and thanks to you, we've been able to set a good standard for other cities to follow. Now, don't feel too discouraged by the 2 C's, because overall, your efforts are properly reflected on the report card, most notably in the renewable energy category. The scale used to find this grade is a harsh one, and an A is no minor feat. The reason why this particular grade is what it is because of the actions that you took. For example, partnering with Marin Clean Energy to get more of our power from green resources, and by making green policies that aren't just expectations, but ordinances and laws. The B in carbon removal isn't too bad either, and if the interests are in favor of it, we certainly have the capabilities to make that grade even better. Another thing that we'd like to bring up our gratitude for is youth involvement. The reason that you're allowing us to present here today is evidence that you care about what we have to say. In our experience, the board has been astonishingly open to input from the youth, and we would also like to thank you for letting us have a say in the future of our city.
First off, although our climate action plan does a lot to work on heading towards zero emissions, there is still more to be done to protect the future. As San Rafael has one of the higher rates of carbon emissions per capita in the country, we have more of a responsibility to work towards lessening our emissions. The percent of waste recovered in Marin County has actually decreased between 2014 and 2015, showing us that we are becoming much more wasteful. Finally, due to our beautiful and protected open space, we have such a great asset for carbon sequestration. Creating more infrastructure to absorb carbon makes getting to net zero emissions much easier. Also, an option for carbon sequestration is wetland restoration, which has great resilience against sea level rise.
We come here today to represent and voice what the youth feel the priorities of the coming year should be in the way of climate change planning. Today we hope to start a conversation between the youth and the city and hopefully come to an agreement about what needs to be done in our city. We have written a request in a resolution we call the Climate Inheritance Resolution, which I have given to the city clerk and you can look at later. And we have written our request in a resolution. We ask your commitment to working with us and hear what the youth feel need to be the priorities of the coming year. These are some examples of what the youth's biggest concerns are. First, we feel that climate change action plans should be updated enough to set a date for net zero emissions. According to the leading climate science in the world, net zero emissions by 2040 is what every city needs to be doing in order to feel no effects of climate change. We know that coming up, the city is redoing the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and we recognize that net zero by 2040 is an extremely ambitious goal. But at least setting a date for net zero emissions is important because it enforces the reality that that is where we need to be headed. Secondly, we know that waste is a challenging issue to fight because as a city, there is only so much that can be done. And a lot of time and energy is spent already working towards reducing waste. Producers will continue to produce unrecyclable products and consumers continue to consume them. However, we really want to make sure that this continues to be an issue that is thought about and worked on. Finally, as a city, we have so much protected open space that creating infrastructure and the beginnings for enhanced carbon sequestration would be much easier than in other cities. Wetland restoration is also a method of carbon sequestering and already an important part of California's coastline. Wetlands are a natural barrier against sea level rise, which poses a huge threat to San Rafael in the coming years as well. This all makes getting to net zero emissions so much easier because we have such a great asset here in San Rafael. It's important to use it to its full advantage. We realize that as a whole, San Rafael is doing very well combating climate change, and we want to thank you so much for all the time, energy, and money you have dedicated to protecting our future. However, we ask you to do more because San Rafael is becoming a national leader in sustainability planning. The more we strive for greatness, the more other cities around the country will need to push themselves to be better. Any change we make here in our city pushes other cities to do more to be like us. That's why in San Rafael, change is so important. By taking the initiative to protect future generations from climate destruction, San Rafael becomes the standard for what every city in the U.S. should be doing. The tasks we ask for are small, local adjustments that can lead to huge, nationwide advancements in climate change adaptation planning. We have to realize the impact that our city can have and realize that even though we are just one city, we really do matter. We will now be taking questions.
Well, first, let me say you guys are great. You did such a nice job with the presentation. It's inspiring to have you here and to join us, and we certainly appreciate your comments. It reminds me in a way, this was a couple years ago, we got a rather nasty report, not that yours was, but from the American Lung Society, saying we were about, I don't know, C or whatever, and so we said, well, that doesn't work, and Rebecca Woodbury, our executive, what's her title? Senior Executive Management Analyst. In any case, she's great. So we said, Rebecca, go back and rewrite our whole approach so we'll get an A next time, which we did. So I'm hoping that we'll have the same outcome here by pointing out areas we can improve upon and emphasize. And you're working with one of our outstanding people, so we hope you enjoyed working with Corey. Comments?
Yes, if I may add. So I have the privilege of being the liaison from the City Council to our Climate Change Action Plan, and I invite you to come to our quarterly meeting, which is on the 19th. We're going to be discussing our priorities for 2017. We review it in January, we talk about it in that group, and then it comes back to this body after we've worked with the community. So I think that would be great if one or all of you could come. I'm sure Corey's probably already put that out there for you. And in addition, we'll be looking at our CCAP plan and obviously figuring out a way to have you be a part of that, because we are examining that. That will be happening over the next year. So I'm really grateful for all the work that you're doing and for raising this issue. As you can see, people kind of stand up and really pay attention when you come before us and talk. I can sit here and talk about it all the time, and after a while, not that these folks do, but some people start to tune me out. But when we hear it from you, people say, oh my gosh, let's listen. So I hope that you will be a part of this going forward, because we really, really appreciate your energy and your insight. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Yes, Commissioner.
Of course. Of course.
So I do have a question. So it's one thing to achieve net zero emissions with our scores of buildings and hundreds of employees. Those are finite numbers, and we exercise a fair bit of influence over those. But our 58,000 people, are you proposing that net zero emissions is achieved by the community at large and not just the city of San Rafael and its finite bureaucracy?
Net zero emissions does mean for the entire county, and we realize that as a city there is so much that can be done to impact the daily lives of people, and that is a cultural change. However, I think it's important that the discussion begins about what can be done to be influencing these decisions that are made, because it is our future that matters so much, and protecting it is a responsibility for all of us.
That's a great answer.
Good answer. Thank you. Good answer. Come back in a couple of years and we will. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We greatly appreciate your input.
Thank you so much for having us.
You bet. Thanks now. Have a good evening.